Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, and thank you to the Press Club for inviting me here today. It's an honor to speak to all of you, as my predecessors have done. Ministers, parliamentarians, CDF and senior defense officials, fellow diplomats, distinguished guests, journalists, embassy colleagues, and friends. Thank you for coming. And thank you for your flexibility in the last-minute change of plan. I know everyone's busy, so I'm really grateful. I'd like to begin by paying my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and to all First Nations people. I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and thank you for the many lessons you've taught me about community, about resilience, caring for country, and passing knowledge to future generations. Attending the Garma Festival during my first week in Australia gave me an insight into the world's oldest continuous living culture and into the voice that dominated the public debate during my first year here. It was a privilege to meet Yunupingu, a hero of the global social justice movement, and to be able to pay my respects at his memorial service later. And I'm grateful to the artists at Yirrkala Art Center who helped me understand how caring for country is woven throughout their lives and in their work. And it came full circle when I welcomed the Yolngu delegation to New York City in September to open the Medellin exhibition, and we all ate lunch together in Central Park. I would like to thank Prime Minister Albanese and his government for the chance to work together to strengthen all aspects of our bilateral relationship, from AUKUS and our defense cooperation to combating climate change. We worked hard to safeguard and protect our critical mineral supply, and we increased our efforts to improve lives and livelihoods in the Pacific. As Laura said, we gathered just a week after an unprecedented U.S. election, and the indications are all pointing towards change. Preparing for that change also gives us a chance to think about the continuity that has characterized this alliance for more than a century. I know that speakers often come here to announce new policy initiatives, but since President Biden's term and my own is coming to an end, I'd like to offer a few personal reflections on my time in Australia and what we still need to do. I also have a feeling that I might get asked about the election in the Q&A portion, so we can save the best for last. To the press corps, I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to get to know you better, because the work you do is absolutely critical. You hold government accountable, question power, and illuminate the complex issues of the day. In this age of growing disinformation, your work is more important than ever. But I had to make some hard choices. A U.S. ambassador leads a team of dedicated, expert, lifelong diplomats who develop and execute policy over multiple administrations. A political ambassador is the president's personal representative, his or her eyes and ears in a country. My assignment is to represent the United States to the people of Australia, not just to the government. And it's just as important to tell Washington what Australians are thinking as it is to tell Australia what D.C. is hoping for. And the only way to do that is to learn from as many people as possible and discover what our alliance really means to people on the ground. I wanted to see if the grand strategies and lofty principles are connected to the experiences of people who live them every day. And that's how I realized that magical things happen in Australia. Where else would eating a sausage in a parking lot on a rainy Saturday lead to a commitment by the leaders of 4 of the most powerful nations on earth to work together to eradicate a form of cancer? That sounds impossible, but it just happened. One of my classmates in Ambassador School challenged our class to send in photos of ourselves eating hot dog in our new country. People sent in pictures of themselves riding elephants and climbing mountains and outside Buckingham Palace. So I started worrying about what I was going to send in. And then I learned about Bunnings. Thanks to the 2 friendly dudes on the tongs at the Bunnings Sausage Sizzle, I learned about the Shitbox Rally, the largest community-based fundraiser for cancer research in Australia, where 400 people drive cars worth less than $1,500, thousands of miles across Australia's bumpiest roads, in honor and memory of friends and family with cancer. And I'm so happy that James Freeman, who started it all, is here today. Not only that, but communities along the way turn out to welcome them, feed them, help fix their cars, and wish them well. As I said, I'm grateful to James and also to Buddy Group 12, who was assigned to look after me and our embassy team and showed us the healing power of community. Like all families, my family has lost too many people we love to cancer. And the spirit of the Shitbox Rally captured my heart and my imagination, and I decided that I had to participate. More importantly, it furthered a presidential priority. One of President Biden's top priorities has been to end cancer as we know it, to cut cancer deaths in half by 2050. He calls it the cancer moonshot, after my father's bold promise to land a man on the moon, not because it was easy, but because it was hard, and because he knew it would bring out the best in us. And since I'm not an auto mechanic, I decided that the best way for me to prepare for the rally was to learn as much as possible about U.S.-Australia cancer collaboration. The people I met and the work they're doing was the strongest possible affirmation of the power of our alliance, not just to act on a global scale, but to achieve concrete results that are saving people's lives. I met researchers like Australian of the Year, Professor Georgina Long, who began her career as a Fulbright scholar in California. She and her colleague, Professor Richard Scolyer, have been recognized for their pioneering work in immunotherapy, and they will soon be working with U.S. partners. I visited world-leading centers of excellence like Peter Mac, which Vice President Biden visited in 2016, and is the foremost partner for U.S. government and research institutions. Professor Grant MacArthur and his team explained that in the past 10 years, the U.S. National Cancer Institute has awarded 211 grants to projects with Australian collaborators, making Australia the third leading recipient of U.S. cancer funding globally. I met Kay and Greg Posch, whose cancer philanthropy is bringing Memorial Sloan Kettering's Cancer Center and Royal North Shore Hospital together. The Poach has also provided initial funding for the network of Indigenous health centers, whose Kalinda Griffiths welcomed me to the International Indigenous Cancer Conference. There I learned about the equity and access challenges which are similar to those facing disadvantaged communities in the United States. I discovered how our systems are compatible and why Australia is the partner of choice for American drug companies trialing new drugs. And at Moderna, I learned how the lessons of COVID and mRNA technology are being applied here and in this region to the fight against cancer. I met giants like Professor Ian Fraser and Dr. Karen Canfell and leaders at Daffodil and Epic and Lucas Del Toca, who's here too, who have put Australia on track to be the first country to eradicate a form of cancer by 2035. And I met Dr. Ted Trimble and researchers at the U.S. National Cancer Institute who have spent their careers working to eradicate cervical cancer. They told me that while cervical cancer vaccine and screenings are routine in the U.S. and Australia, fewer than 10% of women in the Indo-Pacific have completed their vaccination series or had recent screening. Cervical cancer claims the lives of about 150,000 women in the Indo-Pacific every year, making it the third leading cause of death among women in the region. And I was shocked to hear that globally, 40% of women diagnosed with cervical cancer are abandoned by their partners, and over 200,000 children are orphaned every year when their mothers die. And again, this cancer is almost entirely preventable. But there's hope. New forms of screening, one-dose vaccines, patches being developed here in Australia by Vaxxus are on the horizon. These innovations will dramatically lower the cost and revolutionize the screening for this disease. And I learned that Australia is already working in PNG to vaccinate, screen, and treat women and develop pilot programs that can be brought to scale. So when the White House requested ideas for the Quad, we had one. And 2 months ago, President Biden, Prime Ministers Albanese, Kishida, and Modi announced the Quad Cancer Moonshot, which mobilizes millions of vaccines, over $150 million of investment from governments and philanthropy, and will save hundreds of thousands of lives in Southeast Asia and the Pacific in the coming decades. That's in addition to the other lines of effort that the Quad is pursuing to deliver tangible benefits to the region, combating illegal fishing and drug trafficking through increased maritime domain awareness, providing humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, cybersecurity, and law enforcement training, The Quad Fellowship Program has expanded to include graduate students from across Southeast Asia who will now study in all Quad countries and be a source of innovation and collaboration for years to come. As you all know, the Quad was started in 2004 after the Indonesian tsunami, elevated to the foreign minister level during the Trump administration and to the leader level by President Biden. There is now a bipartisan, bicameral Quad caucus in the U.S. Congress as well. And when I was in Wilmington for the most recent summit, every leader made clear the Quad is here to stay. So that's just one example of the continuity of U.S. engagement in this region over decades and the importance that the Biden administration has placed on strengthening our work with allies and partners. President Biden's work to modernize our alliances has been global and multilateral. It's an expression of his deeply held belief that America's greatest strength is in our network of relationships. He recognizes that the challenges we face are worldwide in nature. He has re-energized NATO, bringing 50 countries together to support Ukraine against Russia's brutal invasion, including Australia, which has been one of the most generous supporters. The President has brought Japan and Korea closer than at any recent time, meeting their leaders at Camp David and last week again on the margins of APEC. And the President restored our presence in the Pacific, hosting 2 leader summits at the White House, opening 5 new embassies, and returning Peace Corps to the region. These efforts result from the reality that our strategic environment is becoming more dangerous. The rules-based international order, which has brought peace and prosperity, is being challenged in new and destabilizing ways. What happens in Europe and the Atlantic directly affects the Indo-Pacific. When sovereignty is violated or foreign troops are introduced into a faraway conflict, it threatens all nations. We need look no further than the recent deployment of troops and ballistic missiles from the DPRK into Ukraine to see the implications for this region and understand why all countries, including the PRC, need to play a role in bringing conflict to an end. That's why the Biden administration advanced the most consequential and ambitious bilateral security agenda with Australia since World War II, making transformational commitments that will strengthen regional relationships, deter conflict, and preserve peace, while also investing in cutting-edge technology that will supercharge our economies and provide thousands of high-paying jobs.